Alright guys, we've got a lot to talk about in today's video. Let's jump into it. Guys, welcome back to another video on the channel. We have some championship rumours to go over, but first of all, we got next season's teams all confirmed now. First of all, congratulations to Brentford on securing their promotion to the Premier League. I think deservedly so. In the end, they were the better team over 90 minutes against Swansea. If you did go to the game, if you're a Brentford or Swansea fan, get your thoughts on that one in the comments down below. It was some game in the end, wasn't there? And also congratulations to Blackpool, who are also now back up in the championship. Looking forward to Preston Blackpool next season. That should be an absolute cracker. But once again, I think deservedly so, were the better team on the day against Lincoln. They got off to a disaster of a start in that game, conceding that own goal in the first minute, but good reaction from them and deservedly so. We'll be playing in the championship next season, so yeah, I'm already really looking forward to this next season now. I think it's going to be a really interesting league, and the first thing to really touch on is some new managerial appointments coming into the championship. And starting things out with Sheffield United's new manager, they've announced it as Slavista Jokanovic. Now this one, for me, ticks a lot of boxes, and I think for a lot of people think this was quite the sensible appointment. Actually, he's got a championship pedigree with getting teams out of this league, and it's going to be an interesting one to see how he sort of reshapes this Sheffield United squad, who over the last several years have been in the blueprint of Chris Wilder. The obvious area of this Sheffield United team where they're probably going to look to address over the summer transfer window is probably a bit more natural width. You know, in years gone by, they've obviously had those wing backs to provide that, but when you think back to Jokanovic's Fulham side that got promoted, playing with that quite fluid 4-3-3 system, you know, you think of someone like Ryan Sessegnon, who really had his breakthrough under Jokanovic. I'd imagine that some more wide players will probably be on the cards for Sheffield United over the summer, but yeah, very positive stuff here. Really excited to see how he gets on. I think Sheffield United will be strong next season. And as of recording, it also looks very likely that Chris Wilder will be announced as the new West Brom manager. Really exciting stuff for West Brom here, who I think will also be in quite the strong position along with Fulham for bouncing back at the first time of asking. I think that all three of the relegated clubs are all going to be really strong next season. With Chris Wilder, maybe there are a few more sort of question marks over him just because of how his time ultimately at Sheffield United finished, but regardless of that, he's still a top championship manager, isn't he? Tactically very aware, and for being that motivator to get maximum out of players like he did at Sheffield United. Maybe one of the question marks arises over what system he'd look to actually deploy at West Brom. Would he look to go back to that style that was so successful for him originally at Sheffield United, or would he look to be a little bit more adaptable to the players that West Brom already have at their disposal there this season? It'll be interesting. But yeah, if that one does get confirmed, I think that both West Brom and Sheffield United will be in good situations. But now let's move over to some completed transfers which have gone through in the past few days. Starting out with Omar Richards, whose move to Bayern Munich has now been confirmed. Obviously, this is news that we've known about for quite some time now, with him signing a pre-contract agreement with Bayern Munich, with his contract at Reading running out at the end of the season. But this one has now been finalised, and what a move it's been for the player there. You know, it's been a brilliant season for him at Reading. He's actually made more tackles in this season just gone by than any other championship player. 114 tackles he's put in this season. I think he has been the real outstanding sort of left back in the championship, probably along with Rico Henry, really. Deservedly so, has got himself an absolutely fantastic move and continues along with that trend of sort of young upcoming English players moving over to the Bundesliga. Really excited to see how he gets on there. Huddersfield have completed the signing of MK Dons goalkeeper Lee Nichols. He'll come over on a free contract, with his contract with MK Dons expiring at the end of the season. This was an obvious area where Huddersfield needed to look into after shipping more goals than any championship club in this previous season. Ryan Schofield needs someone to push in, maybe even to overtake him as that number one for the time being. From what I'm led to believe, Lee Nichols, a very good shot stopper, but perhaps not quite as good with his feet, which is interesting because you'd think that Huddersfield would be in the market for a bit more of a sweeper keeper rather than a shot stopper, given the sort of style of football that they play. But we've seen them sort of go against it already with the signing of Matty Pearson, who's not really been sort of like a ball-playing centre-half. So I'm interested to see how these new recruits all fit into this style at Huddersfield. It'll be interesting. Hull goalkeeper George Long has signed for Millwall on a free transfer. This after his contract at Hull has expired. He'll be coming in to rival Bartosz Bilkowski and carrying on pushing him as coming in as their number two. And Millwall have also completed the deal for fullback Scott Malone. Had a really good season in this year gone by with Millwall after making that move over from Derby, originally on a loan deal, has now been turned into a permanent. And Luton have completed the deal for Fred Onyedinma, who comes over from Wycombe this summer. Luton tend to be quite savvy with the business deals that they do, and I think they've got another decent player on their hands here actually. He's incredibly diverse in the positions that he can play. We've seen him play out wide for Wycombe this season as a number 10, further back into midfield, even at left back at times. He is someone who likes to take people on and get on the ball. He completed 87 dribbles this season, which is more than any other Wycombe player, considerably more actually, and so yeah, I think fits into Luton's philosophy there. I'm excited to see how he gets on. And for Luton, Sonny Bradley has also signed a contract extension. There were quite a few rumours going around with Sonny Bradley, with both quite strong links to Preston and to Ipswich Town. However, he has signed on with the Hatters and so will be staying, which I think is good news for them. I think he's been really good for them this season. So yeah, Luton definitely building in the right direction. But there are some of the completed deals which have gone through in the past few days. Now, without any further ado, let's talk about some transfer rumours. The first transfer rumour that really caught my eye was Tom Kearney being linked with a move to Sheffield United, obviously with potentially a link up with his former manager, Jokanovic, who I think Tom Kearney was actually his most used player whilst at Fulham. So, I mean, the connection there makes sense. He was obviously a player who got on very well with that manager, but I still see this one as pretty unfeasible. You'd think, you know, at the end of the day, he's still Fulham's club captain, and in the Championship, there's levels to this, and Tom Kearney is right up there in terms of a Championship player over these last few seasons that he spent there. He missed a large chunk of this previous season due to injury. I mean, prior to that injury, when he did play for Fulham, he was probably one of their better players. 1.7 key passes per 90 in the Premier League, quite an impressive stat. In the Championship, he's absolutely brilliant at breaking those lines into those attacking thirds. He was crucial in both of Fulham's previous promotions. And as Fulham especially are going to look for a bit of a restructure of their squad with a lot of their loan players returning and things like that, a couple of sales maybe in there as well, Tom Kearney, you'd imagine someone who they're going to want to keep around. One potential departure from Sheffield United could be striker Ollie McBurney. Now, I expect there to be quite a few departures with each of the relegated clubs coming down from the Premier League to go ahead and balance the books a little bit and get some money off that wage bill, which is obviously the crucial thing coming back down to the Championship. Ollie McBurney's been a player who's really struggled over the last 12 months, especially at Sheffield United. Just the one goal for him last season. I think the fee they paid for him in the end was around about 15 million, potentially rising up to 20 with the add-ons when they signed him from Swansea. Initially, he was alright for them in the previous season where he scored 6 goals, but this time round just hasn't quite shown enough. Now, we all know that in the Championship, he could be absolutely prolific. He showed that from his time at Barnsley and Swansea, but perhaps a fresh start would be needed. Now, Rangers have been linked to the striker. The only thing that goes against Sheffield United is I don't think they get anywhere near the money they paid for him at this point in time. So it'll be an interesting one to see if they are sort of willing to sell him for a loss. Now, at this point in time, there is a lot, and I mean a serious amount of Premier League interest in striker Daryl Dike. Obviously spent the second half of this last season on loan at Barnsley, where he absolutely ripped it up, was a pivotal part of that team and having the momentum push towards the end of the season, which saw them make the playoffs in the end. 14 starts, 7 appearances from the bench, 9 goals for the striker, 6 aerial duels, 1 per 90 as well. He'd be an absolute force in the Premier League, and at only 20 years old as well, ticks so many boxes for those clubs that are looking for a striker at this point in time. Now, as of recording, it looks as if there's 8 teams in the race for him at the moment. A couple of Championship clubs have been mentioned, with the likes of West Brom and Fulham. Newly promoted Norwich have also been mentioned in the conversation for the striker, and then there's also been the likes of Crystal Palace, Brighton, Southampton, Wolves and Everton, who seemingly at this point in time are the most keen on the player. An interesting story came out the other week as well, linking Dwight Gayle to West Brom, saying that if Chris Wilder is announced as the West Brom manager, he will turn his attention to Dwight Gayle and a former link-up with the striker at the Hawthorns. His previous season at West Brom, he was absolutely prolific in the Championship. It was him up alongside Jay Rodriguez. Those two formed a brilliant partnership. Dwight Gayle scored 23 goals that season. In terms of Gale's record in the Championship in general, he's as close to guaranteed goals that you can probably get. His goals to game ratio is absolutely obscene at this level. Although there would be possibly a couple stumbling blocks in this move, one being wages, the other being his injury record over the past couple of years at Newcastle hasn't been great. You know, the player is getting older now as well. I think he'll be 31 in October. Realistically though, if West Brom do have the chance to re-sign Dwight Gayle, I'm sure all the fans will be buzzing with it. Nottingham Forest have been linked to Accrington Stanley striker Dion Charles. A striker is the obvious area where Forest will be looking for an upgrade during this summer window. 19 goals and 3 assists for Accrington this season. The fee being talked around is around about that 1.5 million mark. We mentioned mentioned Charles in the last video as well, but yeah, it wouldn't be a bad option for Forest looking to add a bit more firepower. To be honest with you, with Nottingham Forest next season, I'm most excited to see how Brennan Johnson gets on. He's obviously just had a fantastic loan spell out to Lincoln, unlucky in the end not to get promoted. They lost that in the playoff final, but yeah, he's more than ready now, you feel like, for Championship football. Forest, as well as a couple of other Championship clubs, also have an interest in Sunderland striker Charlie Wyke. Now, he's an interesting one because his contract situation at Sunderland, as of recording, is yet to be resolved, so he could be available on a free transfer should he not extend that contract with Sunderland. And after the goal scoring season he's just had, 25 league goals, I think 30 in all competitions. Understandably so, there would be quite a bit of interest there. I do, however, still think that Wyke is, albeit a little bit more limited maybe to some of the other strikers who may be available in terms of like his overall game. Luke O'Nien is another Sunderland player who has been linked around the Championship with the likes of Preston, Millwall and Peterborough all interested. Very versatile player with the positions that he can play either as a fullback, at centre half or into midfield. From a Preston point of view, he would tick a lot of boxes for what we're after at the moment. Obviously right back is an obvious area where we desperately need to be strengthening. If he doesn't sign that extension with Sunderland and he is available on a free transfer, he'd be a decent option for some Championship clubs. Sorocaba has been linked to a few Championship clubs with Middlesbrough, Swansea and Watford all interested in the forward. Obviously Middlesbrough especially looking to bolster their attacking options. He's currently playing for FC Midtjylland where he scored 11 goals in the previous season. It looks as if Ashley Fletcher is on his way to the Premier League, with Watford looking like his most likely destination, possibly with some of Watford's forwards moving on this summer. Ashley Fletcher's an interesting one. Missed the majority of this season just gone by with an injury. He had his moments for Middlesbrough, but ultimately it wasn't a move that quite worked out the way a lot of people were hopeful it would at first, Be interested to see how he does get on if he does make that move to the Premier League. It looks more than likely that Peterborough forward Siriki Dembele will be leaving the club this summer. The story came out last January, I think, about him handing in the transfer request to the club, and since he only now has, I think, 1 year left on his current deal, he's rejected the latest contract terms that Peterborough have offered him, so it looks more than likely that this summer will be the last chance they get to really cash in on the player, and no doubt there's going to be a lot of interest in the player. 11 goals, 10 assists for Peterborough this season. There has been interest from Scotland, from both Rangers and Celtic, as well as the Premier League from Crystal Palace. Peterborough also have a big decision to make this summer when it comes to striker Johnson Clark-Harris. Do they look to cash in on the player this summer, or do they look to continue to build the squad around him? Sheffield United and Rangers have each been linked to the forward most recently. I expect we're going to get a bunch more interest in the player as the window develops and goes along. You'd imagine that Peterborough will be looking for sort of £5 to £10 million mark for the player. That one's definitely going to be a story which continues to develop as the months go on. Portsmouth winger Ronan Curtis has been linked to quite a few Championship clubs over recent weeks, with both Blackburn and Reading the latest two clubs who I have seen being mentioned. Blackburn would be quite the interesting move. I think he'd fit in fairly well there with that sort of 4-3-3 that they play with. They will be looking for a bit of a refresh in terms of their forward options. Obviously they'll no longer have Harvey Elliott, and with the possible departure of Adam Armstrong as well, that will leave them with a bit of money to reinvest into that forward line should Armstrong depart. And with Portsmouth potentially looking to freshen up their squad this summer, a move for Curtis could be on the cards. 10 goals, 7 assists. Cardiff have also had an interest in the Portsmouth winger as well. Cardiff have been the latest club to be linked to Derby striker Martin Waghorn. His contract is expiring at the end of the season. We're still waiting to see what actually happens with Waghorn, whether he does sign on with Derby or not. But Cardiff would be an interesting move. They obviously recently signed James Collins as well, so this will be another option on top of that added to their forward line. The link probably comes from Mick McCarthy previously working with Waghorn. He probably had his best season in the Championship actually under him while he was at Ipswich. So yeah, definitely one there to keep your eye on. Coventry have been linked to Bristol City defender Nathan Baker, who is available on a free transfer this summer after being released by Bristol City. Certainly had a bit more experience into that back line for Coventry. The big thing with Nathan Baker really is managing to keep him fit. He only made the 2 starts for Bristol City in this season just gone by. Potentially coming in as his replacement at Bristol City could be Sheffield Wednesday defender Tom Lees, who has been linked with a move to Ashton Gate. Huddersfield were another club who were also interested in the defender. Now we spoke about Charlie Austin to QPR in the last transfer rumour roundup video we did, but this now looks even more concrete and set to happen since Austin has now been released by West Brom. So he will be available on a free transfer, and all the stars are sort of aligning for this move to go ahead and be finalised. We'll be a really good deal for QPR. It also looks like the Andy Lundegren deal will follow along on a similar path. But guys, there we have it. That will now wrap it up for today's video. As always, if you did go and enjoy, make sure to leave a like. If we get it 350 likes, that would be massively appreciated. As well as that, do stick around and subscribe for a bit of regular Championship content. Let me know about any other rumours that we didn't mention in today's video in the comments down below. But apart from that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.